what is this sign of this virgin?
No, I'm glad that Ahaz didn't believe or was willing to follow Isaiah right up front, because Isaiah said, ask for a sign, Ahaz, so that you'll know what I'm telling you is true. If you'll trust Jehovah, you'll be saved, and you'll be blessed. And Ahaz refuses to ask for a sign. He says, no, I would never ask for a sign. He's feigning piousness, and so Isaiah says, okay, you won't ask for a sign, I'm going to give you one anyway. What a remarkable sign it was in verse 14 of chapter 17. Here's your sign, Ahaz. The Lord himself shall give you a sign. Behold, a virgin shall conceive. A virgin shall conceive and bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel, which translates God with us. Remarkable prophecy, because it tells us how Christ would come, born of a virgin, and exactly who he would be. He would literally be God with us.
That wouldn't be his given name, but that would be he was a divine being, the great creator, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, with us, this God, this divine being. But some Bible scholars think this only was maybe Hezekiah's son or something there.
Or maybe Isaiah's son.
Or Isaiah's son. Some in some branches of Christianity think, no, this is only referring to Christ. Carrie, you mentioned earlier dualistic prophecy. Is there any way there could have been an actual woman there that had a son that really named him Emmanuel, that could have been assigned to Ahaz, that, yes, I'm going to not let Judah fall to this invasion, and yet it could have a more important eternal fulfillment with the Son of Mary?
Sure. Many of us, I think, would think that it has at least two fulfillments. One, referring to Christ. Absolutely, this refers to Christ and teaches us something about him. But then we see the same, I think, a fulfillment of it in the next chapter, where Isaiah himself will have a child that will be assigned to Israel, and that will teach them something about Israel. And we have verse 1, the word of the Lord said unto me, take thee a great roll, and write in it with a man's pen concerning Maher-shalal-hash-baz. And I took unto me faithful witnesses to record, Uriah the priest, and Zechariah the son of Jeberechiah. And I went unto the prophetess, and she conceived and bare a son. Then said the Lord to me, call his name Maher-shalal-hash-baz. And this is another fulfillment of that Isaiah's son would also be a sign, like Christ would be.
In that historical setting, when Isaiah was the prophet and Ahaz was the king. So the first son, Emmanuel, there in chapter 17, it talks about she will have a son, she will call him before he knows good from evil. In other words, before he reaches an age of accountability. These two nations that are attacking you will be destroyed. Now, apparently some 5-6 years later, Ahaz calls I would call it a press conference today, and basically says, my wife is going to conceive, and here's his long name. And before
Isaiah who calls the press conference.
Yeah, that's Isaiah calls the press conference. And before this lad is old enough to say Abba, Imma, Mama, Daddy, this has happened. So now we're down to just a few years away. So it was something that has a historical setting, but more important is this wonderful foreshadowing of the Savior himself. Well, any other comments on 7 or 8 before we move on to chapter 9?
The two chapters 17, 18 go together. Don't trust in the arm of flesh. Don't fear the arm of flesh. I'm providing a Savior for you, and here's a witness of it.
And it's worth mentioning here in chapter 18, verse 7, that we get it also in 2 Kings chapter 16. Ahaz, in not trusting the Lord, calls on the king of Assyria. And the Assyrians then are going to come, and when we have them mentioned several times in the next few chapters, that was the great, mighty military power, the empire of Isaiah and Hezekiah, Ahaz's day.
So rather than trusting Jehovah, they trust Assyria.
Get the big guy on the block.
And a lot of warning here about the foolishness of trusting Assyria, if you read it carefully.
And Assyria is going to come in and destroy the northern kingdom of Israel, take tens of thousands of the 10 tribes, the lost tribes as we call them, captive, and thus begins the scattering of Israel during this time. Yeah. But also Judah is afflicted with this. Okay, any other comments on these?
Well, that's just, I guess, a great illustration of what happens when you don't listen to the Lord. If they'd listened to the Lord, they would have been delivered. Instead, they bring upon themselves their own destruction and their own suffering.
Then to make sure they understand the deliverer, we have chapter 19.
Good.
Right.
And the classic verse there, I guess, is what? Probably verse 6. Terry, would you read that
Sing
one?
it. You just hear the music when you read it, don't you?
Yeah, sing it for us.
Before you sing, could I just...
I'm not going to sing.
19 verse 1, we often skip this, but I think it's an important connection because the end of the previous chapter ends with darkness and dimness and anguish. This chapter, 19:1, begins with there's dimness, but mentions the land of Zebulun and Naphtali, and these were the tribal territories up on the west and the northwest side of the Sea of Galilee. When we read the New Testament, that's where Jesus' ministry takes place.
So this is a remarkable prophecy, not only of what he will do, give light to people in darkness, but also where he will do it.
Yes, it comes from the Galilee where the black rocks of the basalt are part of the landscape, but out of this darkness will come the great light. And again, Terry, would you read verse...
And to make sure we got it right.
Verse 6.
For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, the Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there is no end, upon the throne of David and upon his kingdom, to order it and to establish it with judgment and with justice from henceforth, even forever. He starts off in the first part of this talking about a mortal Messiah ministering in Galilee. By the time he gets through 6, he's opened the vision up to include who he really is, the millennial Messiah.
We sometimes look down our noses at the Jews in Jesus' day. I mean, there were good people there, but we say, how come they didn't get it? It's in the Scriptures. But here's one phrase about Jesus being born, but the bulk of 6 and 7 is talking about the larger mission, the powerful, the deliverer, the judge, the governor, the descendant of David. And that's where most of the Old Testament prophecies about Christ's coming focus, is on that deliverer.
Now, for those that don't accept him, or those who reject him, or those who have accepted him but turn away from him, in these chapters there's a wonderful promise that I like. Here's an example at the end of verse 12 where he's talking about some judgments coming upon the people. But for all this his anger is not turned away. His hand is stretched out still. And the Lord's still got his hand out. Now, he's not going to grab us and pull us back from the consequences of these evil acts we've done. But he's not forgotten us. He's still got the hand out. I think it's even kind of motioning, and we recognize if we'll just reach out. Oh, I love that imagery.
It looks like the hand's out to embrace you. If you're living wicked, you feel like ducking.
That's great imagery. I don't think that's what the primary sense of that phrase is. We had it back in Isaiah 5, 2 Nephi 15. We have it here. We've got it again in another chapter or two.
It can be
I really
judgment.
think it means, he stretched out his hand against you in judgment, and it's still stretched out because you haven't repented.
His anger is not turned away.
Yeah.
Right.
I always think about the brother of Jared when he sees the finger of God and he falls down and God says, "What'd you fall down for?" And he says, "Well, I saw your finger. I thought you were going to smite me."
Yeah.